A soft, fading pulse beats within the ancient heart tree. Alara, a young elf whose life is intertwined with the whispering leaves, feels the subtle weakening deep in her own spirit. This is the eternal forest, a realm of cozy magic and gentle light, but its vital energy is waning. Should the pulse stop entirely, the lush greenery would slowly turn to gray. The cheerful streams would fall silent, and the cozy sanctuary her people call home would fade into memory. Faced with this quiet crisis, Alara makes a pivotal choice. She will seek the legendary Sunstone, a relic of immense power, said to restore balance to the natural world. Her journey will take her through enchanting yet challenging lands, testing her courage and her bond with the woods. By the end of her tale, you will discover the profound secret to healing a world that has lost its light. What ancient magic will she need to awaken to save everything she loves? I would love to know where you are listening from and what the local time is for you right now as we begin this cozy adventure together. The air within the whispering grove hummed with a sound like rustling parchment. Alara moved slowly, her every sense straining to untangle meaning from the chorus of murmurs that seemed to emanate from the ancient bark itself. The trees here did not speak in words, but in shifting patterns of light that danced across their trunks, a visual language she had to learn on the spot. Each flicker of gold and silver hinted at a direction, a history, a gentle caution. It was a puzzle that demanded not just sight, but a deep, intuitive listening. The weight of the forest's own concern settled upon her shoulders, a quiet pressure that made each breath feel deliberate. Could she, a single elf, truly be the one to interpret such sacred signs? A flicker of doubt tried to take root in her heart, whispering that she was not ready for this task. But she pushed it aside, focusing on the light, tracing the luminous pathways with her fingertips until a clear image formed in her mind. A river, flowing not with water, but with melody, the singing river. The moment the clue became clear, a wave of weariness washed over her, as if the grove had drawn upon her own spirit to share its secret. From the corner of her eye, in the deep thicket where the light did not reach, a subtle shadow shifted. It was not a shape, but a feeling of quiet observation, a stillness that felt entirely separate from the grove's living murmur. She could have faltered then, feeling the strain of the effort and the unease of the moment. Instead, Alara chose to trust the guidance she had been given. Her dedication to the quest was a comfort against her fatigue. All around her, the evidence of the forest's fading vitality was becoming impossible to overlook. The leaves on the nearest branches, once a vibrant emerald, now held a dusty, muted tint. The very air seemed thinner. Time was moving swiftly, like sand through an hourglass. With the new direction etched into her spirit, Alara stepped forward, leaving the whispering trees behind as the faint, melodic hum of the singing river called her onward. The melodic hum grew into a chorus of crystalline notes that seemed to flow not just around her, but through her. Alara stood at the bank of the singing river, its waters shimmering with a light that pulsed in time with the music. To cross, she understood she could not simply listen. She had to become part of the song. She closed her eyes, letting the river's complex harmony fill her, and then she began to sing. Her voice was a soft, clear thread weaving into the grand musical tapestry. At first, her notes wavered, but she focused, matching the river's pitch and rhythm until her voice and the water's song became one seamless sound. As the final, perfect note left her lips, the river responded. A path of ancient, intertwined roots surfaced from the shimmering water, forming a bridge that glistened with lingering droplets of melody. Stepping onto the other side, a profound warmth bloomed in her palm. A small, smooth pebble, glowing with a soft inner light, rested there, a gift from the grateful river spirits. The stone's gentle heat was a comforting presence, a small piece of the river's heart now traveling with her, but her success had not gone unnoticed. The air around her began to sparkle with sudden, darting lights. Mischievous sprites, drawn by the beautiful harmony, swirled into view. With playful giggles, they flickered through the trees, and suddenly the path ahead split into 3 identical trails. Each one looked just as real and inviting as the others. It was a delightful, yet challenging, illusion. Alara's first instinct was frustration, but she remembered the old ways. She would not fight their trickery with force. Instead, she carefully plucked a single strand of her silver hair and gently wove into it beads of mourning, dew she had collected from a spider's web at dawn. She laid this simple offering on a mossy stone, a traditional elven gesture of respect for the Fey folk. The sprite's giggles softened into curious chirps. They swarmed the offering, their light pulsing with approval. The illusory paths wavered and vanished, leaving only one true trail, winding into the deepening woods. One of the sprites, bolder than the rest, zipped close to her ear. Its voice was like the tinkling of tiny bells, but the message it carried was weighty. "Beware the silent watcher in the shadows ahead," it whispered. "It does not move and it does not speak, but it sees all." With that sobering warning, the sprites faded back into the dappled light. Thanking the empty air, Alara turned to the true path. The further she walked, the more the forest changed. The cheerful birdsong and rustling leaves fell away, replaced by an unnerving, profound quiet. The air itself grew still and thick, as if the very world was holding its breath. The profound quiet of the forest floor gave way to a soft, ambient glow as Alara began her ascent. Above her, the Glimmerwood canopy unfolded, a breathtaking world of ancient branches woven together by bridges of luminous fungi that pulsed with a gentle, blue-green light. Each step was a delicate negotiation, her bare feet finding purchase on spongy mushroom caps and gnarled wood that felt both solid and impossibly ancient. She was climbing into the sky, moving through a living map of light and shadow. The air thinned, and a wave of vertigo threatened to pull her focus from the careful path ahead. She could feel the forest's instability here, a subtle quiver in the great limbs that cradled the sky. Was the entire canopy trembling, or was it just her own fear? The terrifying thought that the forest's condition was changing far faster than anyone had anticipated. Her destination was a massive elder tree, its bark etched with patterns that villagers' tales said were charts of the heavens. After a long, cautious climb, she finally reached a wide, flat branch, its surface carpeted in glowing moss. And there it was, just as the stories promised. The moss was not merely glowing, it was arranged in precise, shimmering constellations, a celestial guide written in living light. Her heart leaped with a fragile hope, But as she knelt to study the patterns, a violent tremor ripped through the canopy. The branch beneath her lurched, and for a heart-stopping moment, she was thrown off balance, her arms flailing over the dizzying drop. Panic, cold and sharp, seized her. She fought it down, forcing herself to remember the lessons of the village elders. She breathed in, slow and deep, imagining her fear flowing out with her breath, her spirit rooting itself to the tree as surely as its own ancient limbs. Her inner calm became her anchor in the chaos. Steady once more, she knew she had to work quickly. Using a thorn to prick a juice-filled berry she carried, she began to carefully transcribe the star map onto a large, sturdy leaf. Each line of sticky, violet juice captured the position of a star, a precious copy of this celestial knowledge. As she made the final mark, another tremor shook the boughs. This time, a large patch of the luminous fungi nearby flickered wildly and then went dark, their light extinguished forever. The loss was a physical blow. The dimming was a direct, undeniable result of the fading magic, a piece of the canopy's soul gone silent. The quest was no longer just about restoration. It was a desperate race against a fading light. With the star map secure, Alara began her careful descent, her gaze fixed on the horizon where, according to the celestial guide, the Meadow of Echoes awaited. The Meadow of Echoes stretched before her, a vast and silent sea of silver grass, dotted with flowers that were tightly closed, their petals like gentle fists. According to the star map, the path was not a single trail, but a pattern she had to walk, a quiet dance of intention across the open field. Her first steps were hesitant, but as her feet traced an invisible line, a single flower at the path's edge unfurled with a soft sigh. A whisper, thin and reedy, brushed against her mind. More lost than you know. The voice was full of a deep and quiet sorrow, and it faded as quickly as it came. She pressed on, turning at angles only she could see, her movements a quiet ritual. With each correct step, another blossom opened, releasing its captured echo into the air. The meadow soon hummed with a chorus of overlapping voices, a complex tapestry of past hopes and long-held fears. One voice urged caution, another spoke of a shortcut that felt uncertain, a third carried the memory of a love left behind. Picking out the true guidance from this gentle cacophony was like trying to follow a single thread in a tangled skein of light. She closed her eyes, letting the disorienting landscape fade, and focused only on the feeling of the path beneath her feet and the timbre of the voices. She sought not the loudest, but the one that resonated with a sense of timeless wisdom. Then she heard it, a voice like weathered wood, calm and deeply kind. Young seeker, your heart is true, but your steps must be sure. The path leads to the crystal caves, where light reveals what the heart conceals. The echo of the Ancient One filled her with a momentary sense of peace. But the cave is guarded by the stone sentries, it continued. They are not foes of flesh, but judges of spirit. They will test the clarity of your intent, for a heart turned inward finds only shadow within. As the final echo faded, the effort of the walk and the intense focus washed over Alara like a gentle wave. Her legs trembled, and a deep weariness settled into her bones. The meadow, now brilliantly alive with color and sound, seemed to sway around her. She knew she could not face a test of spirit in this softened state. With a wisdom that felt both new and deeply innate, she chose not to push forward. She found a soft patch of grass untouched by the echoing magic and sat, folding her legs beneath her. She let her breathing slow, drawing in the calm of the earth and releasing her fatigue with each exhale. This was not a delay, it was an essential part of the journey itself. After a time of quiet reflection, her strength returned, clearer and more focused than before. She stood, feeling renewed, the image of the crystal caves, a place where light would touch the quiet corners of her motivation, now shone brightly in her mind's eye. Leaving the blooming meadow behind, she stepped back onto the forest path, the kindly warning about the stone sentries, a solemn and guiding star in her heart. The path narrowed, winding between two great moss-covered boulders that felt less like stone and more like sleeping giants. There, nestled in the shadows between them, was the Guardian. It was an ancient turtle of such immense size that its moss-draped shell formed a small hill, and upon that living landscape, glowing runes pulsed with a soft, green light. It did not move as Alara approached, but its deep, ancient eye opened, regarding her with a stillness that held the weight of centuries. The path to the crystal caves was blocked, not by force, but by a palpable, patient presence that demanded a different kind of key. A low voice, like stones grinding slowly together in a riverbed, rumbled through the quiet air. To pass, little root, you must answer 3 questions of the forest's heart. The first riddle came swiftly. I have no voice, yet I guide the lost. I have no light, yet I show the way. I am written in the world, but never on parchment. What am I? Alara did not hesitate. The answer rose to her lips, drawn from years of listening to elder tales. You are a trail, she said, the subtle path worn by generations of creatures, the one the heart knows to follow, even when the eyes see only wilderness. The runes on the turtle's shell glowed a shade brighter. The second question followed. I drink the rain and embrace the stone. I am a blanket for the sleeping and a cradle for the new. I am soft, yet I can break the mightiest tree with my patience. What am I? She thought of the cozy groves of her home, of the gentle, persistent life that covered everything. You are moss, she answered, her voice filled with reverence for the humble, vital plant. The Guardian's head lifted slightly, its ancient neck creaking. The third and final riddle held a new, sharper tone. I am sought by many, but found only by one who does not seek me for themselves. I can restore a kingdom, yet I demand no throne. What is the name of the one who wields me truly? This was no test of lore, but of spirit. The question struck at the very core of her quest, forcing her to look inward at the quiet, hidden corners of her motivation. Did a part of her, however small, dream of the songs that would be sung about Alara, the restorer of the eternal forest? The glory, the admiration, the thought was a shiver of cold in her heart. She met the turtle's unwavering gaze, and in that moment, she knew the only answer that was true. The one who wields you has no name you would know, she said, her voice soft but clear. They are simply a servant of the grove. They seek you only for the sigh of relief in the leaves, for the return of the light to the streams, for the quiet pulse of life in the heart tree. I seek the sunstone for the forest, not for myself. A profound silence followed her words. Then, the great turtle slowly, deliberately, shifted its weight to the side, clearing the path. The runes upon its shell blazed with a brilliant, approving green light. You have passed the test of intent, little root, it rumbled. Take this, a small piece of moss-covered stone, warm to the touch and humming with a gentle energy, detached from its shell and floated into Alara's waiting hand. It will offer some small protection, the guardian said, but know this, the caves you enter do not care for riddles. They are a mirror for the spirit. Your thoughts will be given form, and your doubts may become your greatest obstacles. With this sobering blessing, the ancient creature settled back into its eternal watch. Alara's fingers closed around the mossy stone, its protective glow a small, comforting weight in her palm. She took a steadying breath and stepped forward into the waiting darkness of the crystal caves. The darkness of the cave entrance gave way to a soft, internal luminescence. Alara found herself in a cavern where the walls, floor, and ceiling were all formed of seamless, polished mirrors. But these were no ordinary-looking glasses. They did not show her tired face or dusty cloak. Instead, they swirled with living images drawn from the deepest currents of her own spirit. To her left, a mirror showed the eternal forest as a place of brittle, leafless trees under a gray, unmoving sky. She saw the faces of her people, etched with a sorrow so profound it made her breath catch. This was her greatest fear, given vivid and terrifying form. To her right, another mirror bloomed with vibrant color. The heart tree pulsed with a strong, steady rhythm. Streams chuckled with clear water, and the air itself shimmered with cozy magic. This was her most cherished hope, so beautiful it ached. The cave was a chorus of her own heart, and every reflection demanded her attention. A powerful urge rose within her to reach out and touch the vision of the restored forest, to lose herself in its comforting promise. But the guardian's warning echoed in her mind. To touch the glass was to be trapped forever in an illusion, a beautiful lie, while the real world faded. The pull was immense, a siren song for her weary soul. She clenched her fists, her nails pressing into her palms, using the small sensation to anchor herself in the present. She could not fight the visions, and she could not embrace them. She had to walk through them, acknowledging their power without surrendering to it. Each step forward was a battle of will, the terrifying and the wonderful images shifting around her in a dizzying dance. Remembering her grandmother's gentle voice, she knew what she had to do. She stopped in the center of the cavern and looked directly at her own form, distorted and repeated in 100 mirrors. She did not speak to the visions of the forest, but to the reflection of the elf who sought to save it. Her voice was a whisper at first, then grew stronger with each word. You are strong enough for this path, she told her reflection. Your love for the grove is your compass, not your fear. Your hope is your strength, not a chain. As she spoke these words of affirmation, a gentle warmth spread from the mossy stone in her hand. The terrifying vision of the withered forest softened, its gray tones gaining hints of green potential. The alluring vision of perfection became less a tantalizing prize and more a guiding star, a future she was actively walking toward. The mirrors did not vanish, but their power over her fractured, their hold broken by her self-acceptance. As the last threatening illusion faded into mere shimmering light, a single, perfect crystal descended from the cavern's ceiling. It floated into her open palm, cool and smooth. When her fingers closed around it, it began to hum, a clear, resonant tone that held the very melody of the singing river and the rustling whisper of the heart tree. This was no mere stone, it was a key, a tangible piece of the forest's own song, and she knew it would be vital for the trials to come. The mirrored walls around her then dissolved into a soft, shimmering mist. She stepped forward, and the oppressive silence of the caves was replaced by the gentle chorus of night insects. She emerged into a serene, moonlit clearing where the air was rich with the scent of damp earth and the intoxicating perfume of night-blooming flowers. The moonlit clearing was a sanctuary of soft silver light and fragrant night blooms. Standing in its center was a creature of pure legend, a stag whose coat shimmered as if woven from starlight, and whose antlers glowed with a soft, internal radiance. It was the forest spirit given form, majestic and profoundly uneasy. Its great head was lifted, its luminous eyes wide, and every muscle was tensed as if ready to flee from a threat only it could perceive. This magnificent being was a mirror of the woods itself, skittish and trembling with the same imbalance that weakened the heart tree. It did not speak, but when it bowed its head in a slow, deliberate motion, a clear understanding passed between them. It would carry her, but only if she could offer a gift of perfect peace. How could she, burdened with her own fears and the weight of her quest, possibly bring calm to such a noble, restless soul? The challenge was not one of strength, but of spirit. Alara knew a forceful approach would only shatter the fragile trust she needed to build. She closed her eyes, pushing aside her own rushing thoughts, the memory of the mirrored caves, the urgency of her mission, the daunting path ahead. She focused instead on the feeling of the mossy stone in her hand, on the steady rhythm of her own heartbeat, and on the deep, abiding love she held for her home. Then she began to sing. It was not a song of power, but a soft, ancient elven lullaby, one her grandmother had sung to her when shadows seemed too long. Her voice was a gentle stream, each note a drop of clear water washing over the stag's fear. She did not merely sing the melody, she poured her own hope into it, her courage, her unwavering belief that the forest could heal. She shared the very essence of her spirit through the song. As the final note faded into the night air, a profound change came over the stag. Its trembling ceased, its breathing slowed to a deep, steady rhythm, and the light in its antlers softened from a frantic flicker to a serene, constant glow. It took a step forward and knelt before her, its great head bowed in invitation. With a heart full of gratitude, Alara mounted its back, her hands gently resting on its shimmering neck. Then they were moving, faster than the wind, a streak of silver and starlight, flowing through the sleeping woods. The world became a blur of shadow and moonbeams as the stag carried her across distances that would have taken days to walk. This was more than simple travel. It was a partnership, a sign that the natural world was not just allowing her passage, but actively aligning with her purpose. The stag's acceptance was a tremendous victory, but it also carried a sobering truth. Such powerful aid meant the challenges ahead would be equally great, the final tests nearing with every swift, silent leap. All too soon, the stag's breathtaking pace slowed to a walk. They had reached the edge of a new domain. Alara slid gratefully from its back, her legs still humming with the memory of their speed. The stag nodded once, its luminous eyes holding hers for a long moment before it turned and melted back into the forest. Alone again, she turned to face what lay ahead. A faint, collective murmur drifted from the depths of the Valley of Whispers, a sound like 10,000 secrets being spoken at once. The Valley of Whispers was a symphony of lost voices. Every rustling leaf and passing breeze carried the echoes of ancient elves, 1,000 overlapping conversations from ages long past. One moment, a gentle murmur would offer a hint about the path ahead, a true piece of guiding wisdom. The next, a sigh would bring back the scent of rain on a particular afternoon from Alara's own childhood, a memory so vivid it stopped her in her tracks. The most persistent echo was a difficult one, the sharp sting of a sapling she had not been able to protect during a harsh season, the memory of its faded leaves, a heavy weight of old regret. The valley was using her own heart against her, tempting her to linger in a past she could not change. The whispers grew into a roaring chorus in her mind, a dizzying storm of nostalgia and secret knowledge that threatened to pull her spirit apart. To find the true guidance, she had to listen not with her ears, but with her intent, filtering the noise for the one voice that resonated with the forest's current need. She closed her eyes, letting the memory of that earlier time wash over her without resistance. I release you, she thought, not as a denial of the past, but as a choice to carry its lesson forward instead of its weight. The moment she made that conscious decision, the personal echoes lost their power, fading into the general murmur. From the clarity that followed, one whisper emerged, clear and steady as a bell. "Seek the heart where light and shadow meet," it said. The voice held the gravity of countless seasons. It is a place of both great power and profound stillness, guarded by magic older than the first trees. The whispers around this final clue intensified, swirling with a mixture of reverence and caution. The Sunstone's resting place was not merely hidden, it was sacred, and its protection was as challenging as it was ancient. Taking a deep, centering breath, Alara fixed her focus on that single, wisest whisper. She turned from the chaotic center of the valley and followed the sound toward a quieter grove where dappled sunlight filtered gracefully through a thick canopy. The grove was a living mosaic of shifting light and shadow. Patches of brilliant gold danced and swayed across the leaf-littered floor, a beautiful but complex puzzle laid out between two ancient guardian oaks. Alara understood instinctively that the path forward was not a physical one, but a sequence of steps, a dance of intention upon the light. Her first footfall onto a sunlit patch was met with a soft, chime-like sound, and the patch glowed brighter, holding its shape. But the shadows around it seemed to recoil, then surge back, trying to cover the adjacent illuminated spot. The grove itself was resisting, its protective magic testing her resolve with unpredictable, flowing darkness. She had to be agile, leaping from one stable patch of light to the next before the shadows could swallow her path. It was a challenge of both observation and patience, forcing her to read the rhythm of the light's movement, to anticipate rather than react. Frustration began to prickle at her, the shadows seeming to move faster with each passing moment. Then, she remembered the resonant crystal from the caves, still humming with the forest's own melody in her pouch. Could it interact with this magic? She pulled it out, and as its clear, pure light spilled onto the grove floor, the shifting patterns slowed, the patches of gold becoming more defined and stable. She was not fighting the shadows, but amplifying the light, a creative act of harmony that the grove accepted. With the crystal's aid, she completed the sequence, her final step landing on a central, radiant circle. A triumphant chord echoed through the trees, and a shimmering, arched portal of pure light flared to life between the two oaks. A wave of the forest's warm approval washed over her, a feeling of profound rightness. Yet, beneath that warmth, lay a subtle undercurrent of anticipation. This success did not feel like an end, but a beginning. The final, most demanding test was waiting just beyond that luminous gateway. Taking a steadying breath, Alara stepped through the arch of light. The sensation was not of movement, but of a gentle, instant rearrangement of the world. The grove vanished, replaced by the soft, cool air of a misty dawn. She stood on the shore of a tranquil, isolated island, its shores lapped by the quiet waters of a vast, encircling lake. The air on the island was cool and still, heavy with the scent of wet stone and ancient earth. Before her, a low altar of weathered rock rose from the moss, its surface almost entirely covered by a thick, living blanket of vines. These were no ordinary plants, their leaves a deep, glossy green, and their tendrils pulsing with a faint, golden light that traced the shapes of forgotten runes carved into the stone beneath. Alara understood that to reach the altar was to communicate with the island itself. She reached out, her fingers hovering just above a vine, and a subtle tremor ran through the entire network, a clear and quiet warning. Force would be met with force. She withdrew her hand, closing her eyes to find a different way. She remembered the gentle understanding of the stag and the trusting whispers of the valley. Her voice, when she spoke, was soft, a murmur meant for a living ear. "I mean no harm to this sacred place," she said. "I come only to restore a balance we all share. I ask for your trust, not your surrender." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, with a sound like a soft sigh, the vines began to stir. They did not snap or wither, but slowly, gracefully, they unwove themselves from the altar's surface, retracting into the surrounding moss as if making a conscious choice to grant her passage. The revealed runes shone with a clearer light, and nestled in the moss at the altar's base were 7 smooth, dark stones. Her heart leaped in recognition. This was the final pattern from the star map she had transcribed in the trembling canopy. Working with painstaking care, she began to place the offering stones into the shallow depressions on the altar's surface. Each stone settled with a soft, resonant click, and with each one, the runes glowed brighter, their light building from a gentle pulse to a steady, brilliant radiance. As the 7th and final stone clicked into place, the entire altar flared with a light so intense it forced her to shield her eyes. A deep, grinding rumble echoed from beneath her feet, and the whole island gave a single, powerful tremor. When the light faded, the altar had split open, revealing a steep staircase of rough-hewn stone that descended into a profound darkness. The air that wafted up from below was cool and carried the deep, clean scent of undisturbed earth. This was it, the final descent. Every test, every whispered clue, and every act of empathy had led to this threshold. The powerful tremor was a final reminder that the magic she was about to confront was as ancient and fundamental as the world itself. Taking a deep, determined breath to steady her racing heart, Alara placed a foot on the first cold step and began her journey down into the heart of the island. The air in the chamber was thick and hushed, the silence of a place that had not known a visitor for centuries. At its center, resting on a simple pedestal of living wood, was the sunstone. It pulsed with a soft, warm light, a miniature sun promising renewal, but a cage of gnarled ancient roots, themselves glowing with the same fading green energy she had felt in the heart tree, surrounded the relic, their thorns sharp and watchful. Hope surged within Alara, a deep urge to simply take it and run. She reached out, her fingers inches from the warm light. Instantly, the roots constricted, tightening into an impenetrable wall, and a thorn nicked her palm. A voice, not in the air but within her very soul, resonated through the chamber. It was the voice of the forest, ancient and weary. Why do you seek this power, little root? The question was not a challenge, but a profound and sorrowful inquiry. It held the memory of every broken promise and every good intention that had turned to pride. Alara knew that words, no matter how eloquent, were worthless here. They were merely leaves on the wind. The only answer that would matter was the truth written on her spirit. She closed her eyes, letting her hands fall to her sides. She did not speak of her quest or her journey. Instead, she opened the gates of her heart, allowing everything to flow outward in a silent, emotional torrent. She projected the memory of her grandmother's hands, patiently teaching her to weave with willow strands. She shared the cozy warmth of the village fires under a canopy of healthy, whispering leaves. She let the spirit feel the specific, tender love she held for the way morning dew clung to a spider's web, and the profound peace of listening to the heart tree's strong, steady pulse. Then she shared her fear, not for herself, but for the silent streams and the dusty leaves. She laid bare her sorrow for the sapling she could not save, not as a regret, but as proof of how deeply she felt every transition. Her desire was a pure, simple thing, stripped of all vanity. She did not want to be a hero sung about in tales. She wanted only to hear the forest breathe easily again. For a long, suspended moment, there was only the quiet hum of the chamber and the feeling of her own soul laid bare. Then the voice spoke again. Its tone shifted from sorrow to a gentle, resonant warmth. I see you. The intertwined roots began to loosen, their thorns retracting, the glowing barrier dissolving into motes of golden light that floated upward like embers from a comforting fire. A distant, deep rumble shook the chamber, a stark reminder that the forest above was in its final moments of struggle. The time for contemplation was over. With a steady hand and a heart full of purpose, Alara reached for the sunstone. Her fingers closed around the sunstone, and the world dissolved into pure, brilliant light. It was not a light she saw with her eyes, but one she felt, a rushing river of solar warmth flowing up her arm and flooding her entire being. The energy was immense, ancient, and far greater than she had ever imagined. It moved through her veins, a power meant to restore an entire forest, and for a breathtaking moment, she felt utterly overwhelmed. Her vision blurred, her knees weakened, and a resonant sound filled her ears, like the music of creation itself. She was a slender reed, trying to channel a waterfall. Instinct told her to fight it, to clamp down and control the flow, but that only made the pressure build behind her eyes, a deep vibration that seemed to echo through her whole self. Then, through the storm of power, a memory surfaced, clear and calm. It was the voice of an elder, speaking of rivers and how a stone that resists the current is worn smooth, while a leaf that surrenders to the flow travels great distances unharmed. The lesson was not about control, but about trust. With a final, conscious release of her own will, Alara stopped trying to hold the power. She let go, becoming a conduit, a hollow bone through which the song of the sun could flow. The intense sensation softened into a warm, vibrant hum. Golden energy poured from her invisible waves, washing over the stone chamber and flowing up through the earth. Outside, the effect was instantaneous. The withered moss at the base of the altar flushed a vibrant emerald green. The gray, brittle leaves on a nearby sapling plumped and softened, their color returning in a shimmering cascade. A wave of life radiated outwards from the island, a visible pulse of gold that raced across the lake and into the forest beyond, touching every root and branch in its path. But channeling such a force had its cost. As the forest awakened, Ilara felt her own strength fading, seeping into the soil with the light. Her limbs grew heavy, her thoughts slow and thick. The brilliant light in the chamber began to dim at the edges of her vision, soft shadows gathering. She had given the forest its life back, but in doing so, she could feel her own energy flickering, like a candle after a long, bright burn. The sunstone's glow in her hand finally stabilized, no longer a wild inferno, but a steady, warm pulse, its power safely anchored to the world. As the last wave of energy left her body, Ilara settled onto the cool stone floor, the comforting weight of the stone still cradled in her palm, her awareness drifting away on a tide of deep weariness. A soft radiance gathered in the air before her, weaving itself into the shimmering, ethereal form of the forest spirit. It was the stag and the whisper and the ancient tree all at once, its voice a gentle rustle in her mind. You have done what few could, little root. You have restored the song. For this, our gratitude is eternal. The spirit extended a luminous tendril of light toward the sunstone in her hand. A choice now lies before you. You may keep this relic as a token of your deed, a well-earned badge of honor. Its power will be yours to command, a beacon of your status for all time. Or you may return it to its sanctuary. In doing so, you ensure the forest's magic remains self-regulating, a cycle of eternal balance that needs no guardian. The offer hung in the air, immense and tempting. To keep the stone would mean never feeling powerless again. She could protect her people from any future hardship, her name celebrated in every song. It was a future of security and reverence, a life free from the fear she had carried for so long. Yet as she looked inward, she found no desire for that kind of power. Her journey had stripped her of any such ambition. The true reward was not in holding the light, but in knowing it shone brightly for all. Without a moment of hesitation, Ilara stepped forward and placed the warm, pulsing sunstone back onto the simple wooden pedestal. The spirit's form brightened, its light washing over her in a wave of profound approval. Then, so be it. Your selflessness is the final key. As our thanks, you will never walk alone in these woods again. A gentle, permanent connection blossomed within her spirit, a new sense as natural as breathing. She could now feel the subtle happiness of the soil under her feet and the quiet contentment of the trees as they drank in the renewed light. It was not a power to be wielded, but a kinship to be cherished. The spirit's form began to fade, its light dissolving into the air like morning mist. The deep, resonant voice echoed one last time in her heart. The balance is restored. The choice to relinquish such a powerful tool for the sake of a fragile, self-sustaining future was the ultimate proof that her quest had never been about her. She had traded a crown for a conversation, and in that exchange, she found a deeper peace than any artifact could provide. As the last shimmer of the spirit vanished, the cool stone of the chamber melted away. Ilara blinked, finding herself standing once more in the familiar village grove. The heart tree pulsed with a strong, vibrant rhythm, its leaves a brilliant, healthy green. All around her, her people were gathered, their faces alight with joy and relief, their soft cheers a welcome music after the long silence of her quest. The village feast was a symphony of cozy lights and grateful hearts. Under the gentle glow of paper lanterns strung between the ancient boughs, long tables were filled with sweet berry wines and honey bread, while the air hummed with the music of flutes and joyful conversation. Ilara sat in a place of honor, encircled by the eager faces of her people, from the youngest elf children to the village elders whose eyes held the wisdom of countless seasons. As she began to speak, her voice was not that of a triumphant hero, but of a humble traveler sharing a profound lesson. She recounted the challenge of the singing river and the playful nature of the sprites, the deep wisdom of the stone sentries, and the revealing honesty of the mirrored caves. She did not boast of her own cleverness, but spoke of the forest's own guidance, the small acts of listening and empathy that had truly lit her path. Her words painted vivid pictures in the minds of her listeners, and a new kind of quiet determination settled over the gathering. Inspired by her journey, several young elves declared their intention to become dedicated guardians of the groves, while the elders proposed an annual festival of renewal, a time to reflect on the delicate nature of their home and celebrate the courage it takes to protect it. Amid the laughter and the warm accolades, however, Ilara felt a subtle, quiet shift within herself. The simple life she had known, the quiet rhythm of her days before the quest, was now a memory. She was no longer just Ilara who mended cloaks and tended the saplings. She was Ilara who had faced the forest's heart and returned. A gentle thoughtfulness touched her spirit, the bittersweet understanding that her old place in the community had been forever altered by her extraordinary actions. The weight of their admiration was a new kind of responsibility, a legacy that now rested firmly on her shoulders. As the last notes of music faded and the lanterns began to dim, Ilara made a quiet decision. She would not retreat from this new role, but would embrace it with the same selflessness that had guided her quest. She stood and addressed the lingering crowd, her voice clear and steady. "I will become a storyteller and a guide," she vowed. "I will teach our children not just the names of the trees, but the language of their roots. I will share the lore of balance, so that the wisdom of the forest is never forgotten again." Her declaration was met with soft, approving nods, solidifying her path forward. Then, as the villagers began to disperse toward their cozy homes, she slipped away from the celebration. She walked the familiar path to her favorite quiet spot, a soft patch of moss at the base of the great heart tree. Sitting there, she placed her palm against its rough, warm bark, feeling its strong, steady pulse echo the new, gentle rhythm of her own heart, a quiet testament to a journey that had changed both the forest and the elf who loved it. The gentle pulse of the heart tree was a familiar rhythm against her back, a constant and comforting presence in the quiet night. As Ilara sat in peaceful reflection, a soft, silver light caught her eye. There, on a low-hanging branch directly before her, a single leaf was unfurling. It was unlike any other on the tree, its surface shimmering with a delicate, metallic sheen. and it seemed to be growing just for her. Compelled by a deep intuition, she reached out and let her fingertips brush its cool, smooth surface. The moment she made contact, a vivid image bloomed behind her eyes. She saw a secluded grove, hidden behind a cascading waterfall, where flowers she had only heard of in ancient healers' tales now bloomed in vibrant, impossible colors. This was a gift, a final secret from the forest, a living apothecary of rare and potent healing herbs. The vision faded, leaving her with a profound sense of purpose. Her great quest was over, but her service could continue here, in this quiet corner of the woods, tending these gifts and using them to aid any creature in need. A flicker of conflict arose within her. Should she rush back to the village and announce this discovery to the healers, adding this new resource to their shared knowledge? Or could she keep this one place as a personal sanctuary, a quiet retreat for her own spirit, which still felt the echoes of her long journey? The desire for a private space, a grove that was hers alone to cherish and protect, was a powerful temptation. Yet, as she weighed the solitary solace against the communal good, her heart knew the true path. The forest had given this gift not for her alone, but for all its children. She would share the grove's location with the village healers, entrusting them with its bounty, but she would also make it a part of her own practice, visiting often to tend the plants and to meditate, ensuring her own bond with the woods remained strong and vital. This hidden grove was not an end, but a new beginning. It symbolized her unique role as a guardian, promising smaller, quieter adventures in stewardship, free from the world-shaking urgency of her quest. It was a promise of ongoing connection. Content with her decision, Alara leaned her head back against the ancient bark. The stars above seemed to twinkle in warm agreement, and as she closed her eyes, she began to plan her first solitary visit to the waterfall grove at dawn. The first rays of dawn painted the waterfall in hues of rose and gold as Alara stepped into the hidden grove. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and the vibrant perfume of the legendary healing herbs, their petals shimmering with dew. Nestled among the roots of a weeping willow, she discovered a family of sparrows, their tiny forms trembling. One adult bird lay with a wing bent at an unnatural angle, while the others huddled close, their chirps weak and fearful. The grove had presented its first test not in grand magic, but in simple, necessary compassion. Her hands, still humming with the faint echo of the sunstone's power, glowed with a soft green light as she reached for a cluster of heartleaf blossoms. She crushed the petals into a poultice, her movements slow and deliberate. Most of the birds allowed her gentle touch, their rapid recovery evident as they hopped about with renewed energy, their grateful songs filling the air. The grove itself seemed to respond, the leaves above rustling in approval and the light growing warmer and brighter. But the injured adult, a sparrow with a dark, intelligent eye, shrank back from her approach. Every time her fingers drew near, it fluttered desperately, its fear a palpable barrier. Frustration was a useless tool here. Alara settled onto the moss, her own breathing slow and deep. She began to hum the same ancient lullaby that had calmed the Starlit Stag, her voice a soft stream of sound weaving through the morning air. She did not look directly at the frightened creature, but offered the song as a gift, a promise of safety. It took what felt like an age, the sun climbing higher in the sky, but finally the sparrow's trembling ceased. It watched her, its head tilted, and then it hopped once, twice, onto her open palm. She applied the poultice with a feather-light touch, her magic sealing the tiny fracture. The relief that washed through her was as profound as any she had felt on her great quest. This was the true work, the uncelebrated practice of showing up with patience and care, day after day. She remained for hours, ensuring every bird was fed with crushed berries and sipping water from a leaf, her commitment a quiet vow. The forest's renewal was not a single event, but a fragile, living process that thrived on these small, consistent acts of guardianship. As the now healthy sparrow family took to the air in a joyful, chirping spiral, a familiar, serene presence touched the edge of her awareness. She turned to see the luminous stag stepping silently from behind the waterfall, its antlers aglow in the dappled light, come to share the peace of this sacred morning. The stag's luminous head dipped in a slow, deliberate bow, its dark eyes holding Alara's with an unspoken question. In that silent exchange, she understood the profound offer being made. This noble spirit of the woods was not merely visiting, it was asking to walk beside her as a steadfast companion and guide, especially when her steps led into the deepest, most untamed parts of the forest. A flicker of hesitation warmed her cheeks. Would leaning on such a powerful ally make her own skills grow dull, her hard-won independence slowly fading like a forgotten path? But as she looked into its patient gaze, she saw not a servant, but a partner. The choice felt less about reliance and more about relationship. With a soft exhale of acceptance, she reached out and placed her palm upon its smooth, cool brow. A gentle pulse of energy passed between them, a silent pact, sealed not by magic, but by mutual trust. From that moment, she knew the stag would appear whenever she had true need, its presence strengthening her ability to protect the woods. She made a quiet decision then, to view this bond not as a crutch, but as a friendship between equals, a beautiful symbol of the forest's own reciprocity. This deepened connection wove her more tightly into the wild tapestry around her, but it also wove a new thread of responsibility into her life. The majestic creature was now under her care as well, its well-being a part of her sacred duty. With the stag standing calmly at her side, Alara felt the turning of a page. A new chapter of peaceful exploration and shared guardianship was beginning in the vibrant, eternal woods. The invitation arrived not with a grand ceremony, but with a single, woven leaf placed gently on her doorstep. It was a summons to sit among the village elders, a circle of faces etched with the lines of long experience. When Alara entered the council chamber, the air was thick with the scent of old parchment and quiet respect. The eldest, a woman named Lyra, with eyes like deep pools of still water, spoke the formal words, offering her a seat to help guide the forest's future. Alara accepted with a bowed head, her voice a soft murmur of gratitude, feeling the weight of the honor settle upon her shoulders like a cloak woven from responsibility. For her first contribution, she did not speak of the Sunstone or the Starlit Stag. Instead, she proposed the creation of a guardian's path, a carefully guided journey where young elves could safely learn the forest's gentle secrets, just as she had, but without facing its full, untamed challenges alone. A wave of enthusiastic whispers swept through the chamber, the younger members visibly brightening at the idea. Yet, from the corner of the room, a low, measured voice offered a note of caution. an elder named Kale, his arms crossed over his chest, questioned whether such structured learning could ever truly instill the intuitive wisdom the wild demanded. Was it not the unexpected trials that had forged her own understanding? Alara felt a flush of heat, the instinct to defend her great quest rising within her. But she remembered the mirrored caves and the lesson of the quiet heart. She did not recount her past deeds. Instead, she spoke calmly of the sapling that bends in the wind, learning resilience without being broken. She argued that a foundation of safe knowledge could build the confidence needed for true, independent discovery later on. She chose to listen far more than she spoke in those early meetings, offering her thoughts only when they added a new layer to the discussion. Her humility disarming the initial skepticism. By earning her place through quiet reason rather than past glory, she ensured that the hard-won lessons from her journey would become woven into the very fabric of Elven society, shaping traditions for generations to come. The stakes of every word she uttered were now immeasurably higher. After the council meeting adjourned, Alara walked alone through the softly lit village. The cozy lanterns glowing in doorways and the sound of laughter from within homes now felt different. She saw her home not just as a place of comfort, but as a living community whose future she was now sworn to protect, a stewardship as sacred as any quest. The air was crisp with the promise of a new tradition as Alara stood before the first small group of young elves at the start of the Guardian's path. Their wide eyes reflected the dappled sunlight filtering through the canopy, a mixture of excitement and nervous anticipation. She began not with grand tales, but with simple, grounding exercises, guiding them to press their ears against the rough bark of an elder oak. At first, they heard only the wind, but Alara taught them to listen for the subtle, watery pulse of sap rising, the quiet language of the tree's own life. They moved on to identifying plants, learning to distinguish common moss from the rare, silver-veined heartleaf by its distinctive scent and the way it curled towards the light. One child, a quiet girl named Leora, who had lingered at the back of the group, seemed to have a particular stillness about her. When a curious rabbit hopped from the undergrowth, the other children gasped, but Leora simply knelt, her hand outstretched. The rabbit, after a moment of sniffing the air, nudged her palm with its nose, a silent communication that needed no words. Alara watched, her own heart swelling with a quiet joy, and made a note to spend extra time with Leora to help her gentle gift find its full expression. The lesson was flowing beautifully when the first cool drop landed on Alara's cheek, then another. A soft, steady rain began to fall, and a ripple of disappointment went through the children. Their first adventure was being washed away, but Alara simply smiled, lifting her face to the sky. She asked them to close their eyes and listen to the rhythm of the rain on the leaves, a gentle drumming that was the forest's own lullaby. She taught them a simple song of gratitude, their young voices rising together to thank the clouds for the water that quenched the roots of the great trees and filled the streams where the fish swam. What could have been a disruption became a beautiful, spontaneous lesson in adaptability and thankfulness. As their song faded, the rain softened to a mist and then ceased. The sun broke through the clouds, and a perfect, brilliant rainbow arched over the path's entrance, its colors shimmering in the damp air. The children looked at it in awe, their initial disappointment entirely forgotten, replaced by a sense of wonder and belonging. Seeing their transformed faces, Alara felt a profound and steady satisfaction settle deep within her spirit. The wisdom of the woods was no longer a solitary weight she carried, but a living seed she had planted in fertile ground. The path was more than a trail. It was a promise, and its first steps had been a resounding success, ensuring that the delicate balance of their home would be cherished by capable hands for generations to come. The first annual festival of Renewal filled the village with a palpable sense of hope. As twilight deepened, all eyes turned to Alara, who stood before the great heart tree with a single unlit lantern. Her task was to draw a spark directly from the ancient tree's own energy to ignite the central flame. A hush fell over the gathered elves as she reached out, her palm hovering just above the weathered bark. For a breathless moment, nothing happened. Then, a tiny, hesitant flicker of light emerged from the tree and danced at her fingertips. It was weak and unsteady, wavering as if unsure of its own strength. A ripple of anxious whispers moved through the crowd. Alara felt the collective doubt pressing in, but instead of forcing the spark, she closed her eyes. She poured all of her confidence and deep, abiding love for the woods into that fragile light, silently renewing her sacred vow to protect this home. As her inner resolve solidified, the spark flared with sudden brilliance, leaping from her hand to the lantern's wick, which burst into a warm, golden blaze. A collective sigh of relief and wonder swept through the village. One by one, elders and children alike stepped forward to light their own lanterns from hers. Soon, the entire settlement was awash in a breathtaking constellation of soft, floating lights, a mirror of the starry sky above, held safely in the hands of the community. This new tradition wove the story of the Sunstone and Alara's quest directly into the fabric of their shared memory, ensuring the lessons of balance and courage would never be forgotten. Amid the joyful singing and celebratory dances that followed, Alara felt a quiet pull. She slipped away from the glowing crowd to stand alone at the base of the heart tree. Placing her hand upon its bark, she felt its strong, steady pulse, thrumming in perfect harmony with her own heartbeat, a silent conversation between guardian and grove that needed no words. The bark felt warm and alive beneath her palm, a familiar comfort after so many seasons. But tonight, something new hummed within the heart tree's steady rhythm, a delicate vibration like a whispered secret. As Alara focused on the feeling, a small, luminous bulge swelled from a nearby branch, its surface shimmering with soft, shifting colors that held the faint echo of a singing river and the steadfast calm of a stone sentry. This was no ordinary fruit. It was a seed pod woven from the very essence of her journey. A profound understanding flowed into her, not as words, but as a feeling carried on the sap. This seed, when planted, would grow into a sapling of perfect balance, a living memory of resilience and the choice to relinquish power. The honor of it was immense, a legacy that made her own spirit feel small and fragile. Was she, with all her quiet doubts and simple desires, truly worthy of such a permanent mark on the world? The question hung in the air, weighty and still. Where could such a tree possibly belong, where its unique magic could do the most good? She looked from the cozy lanterns of the village to the deep, untamed shadows of the woods, and the answer settled within her with a deep sense of rightness. It would not be planted in the village square for all to admire, nor hidden away in some forgotten grove. It would stand at the threshold, in the soft space where cultivated paths met the wild undergrowth, a bridge between community and nature, a symbol of the harmony she had fought to restore. This young tree would one day mature into a new heart tree itself, its roots woven into the same ancient magic, ensuring the forest's pulse would beat strong for generations, a lineage born directly from her courage. Cradling the warm, pulsing seed pod in both hands, Alara walked toward the chosen edge of the village. The forest itself seemed to hold its breath in respectful silence, bearing witness to the quiet beginning of a new eternal story. The chosen soil felt warm and welcoming beneath her fingers as Alara knelt to plant the luminous seed pod. The entire village formed a silent, respectful circle around the boundary where the well-tended paths of their home met the untamed mystery of the woods. With a deep sense of ceremony, she anointed the earth with water collected from the guardian's path, each drop holding the memory of a child's laughter and a lesson learned. Then she began to sing the ancient lullaby, the same melody that had once soothed a starlit stag, her voice weaving a gentle spell of safety and growth over the tiny seed. As the final note faded, a tender green shoot pushed through the soil, unfurling two perfect leaves that glowed with a soft, internal light. A visible wave of vitality rippled outward from the sapling, the surrounding moss deepening to a richer emerald, and the nearby flowers brightening as if touched by an invisible sun. The forest itself seemed to exhale, a profound and collective sigh of contentment that settled over the grove. In the midst of this tranquil moment, a flicker of movement caught her eye. A curious squirrel, drawn by the strange, glowing object, scampered toward the sapling and began to scratch at the soft earth around its base. A jolt of awareness shot through Alara, but she moved with deliberate calm. She did not shoo the creature away. Instead, she made a soft, clicking sound with her tongue and gently scattered a handful of nuts she kept in her pouch a few feet from the delicate roots. The squirrel, distracted by the easier prize, abandoned its activity and scurried off with its treasure. The moment was a quiet reminder that her guardianship would be a practice of endless patience and gentle redirection, a constant care that worked with nature's curiosity, never against it. Turning to the gathered children, whose wide eyes had followed the entire exchange, she saw a perfect opportunity for a lesson in protective care. "Let us build a home for this young tree," she said, her voice warm and inviting. She showed them how to select flexible twigs and weave them into a low, beautiful fence, not as a barrier of fear, but as a marker of respect. Their small hands worked diligently beside hers, each intertwined branch a promise to safeguard the future. This simple, shared act bonded them to the sapling in a way words never could, making them active participants in its story. The successful planting was more than a ceremony. It was the true beginning of a new era for the village, a time when the bond between elf and forest would be woven even more deeply into the fabric of their daily lives. As the last twig was set in place, and the villagers began to drift back toward their homes, their murmured conversations filled with a renewed sense of purpose, Alara remained. Her gaze was drawn upward, where the first star of the evening had appeared in the darkening violet sky, its gentle light shining directly above the softly glowing sapling like a silent, celestial blessing. The gentle light of the sapling seemed to call to her as the stars emerged one by one. That evening, Alara returned alone to the young tree, settling on the soft moss at its base and closing her eyes. She let her breathing slow, matching the quiet rhythm of the night, and opened her heart, allowing the vivid memories of her long journey to flow through her once more. The melodic challenge of the singing river, the patient wisdom of the stone guardian, the revealing honesty of the mirrored caves, all passed through her spirit like a gentle, flowing stream. As she meditated, the sapling began to respond. A soft, soothing light emanated from its glowing leaves, wrapping around her in a warm, comforting embrace. It was as if the young tree was not only receiving her memories, but actively weaving them into its very core, storing each story within the forming rings of its trunk, like a living library for the future. A quiet feeling of transition brushed against her heart then, the bittersweet sense that her great, defining quest was truly complete. The urgent purpose that had guided her every step for so long was now a story she told, not a path she walked. But as that thoughtful reflection formed, the sapling's light pulsed gently, and a new understanding bloomed within her. This was not an ending at all, but a beautiful and profound beginning. Her journey had been the seed, and this quiet, growing connection was the tree. In that moment of clarity, she made a personal vow, a promise whispered not aloud, but into the shared space between her spirit and the sapling. She would return to this very spot under every full moon to meditate and share new stories, not just of grand adventures, but of small discoveries and daily wonders, ensuring their unique bond remained a living, growing thing. This monthly ritual would become her own private renewal, a sacred time to recharge her spirit and remember her deeper purpose, free from the weight of a community's expectations or the pressure of a looming crisis. Rising from her meditation with a deep sense of peace, Alara walked back toward the cozy lantern lights of the village, her heart feeling light and full of quiet dreams for all the peaceful tomorrows to come. That night, Alara dreamed not of memories, but of a living truth. The eternal forest stretched before her in an endless, vibrant tapestry, its canopy a ceiling of emerald light where playful sprites danced in sunbeams. Elven laughter echoed from cozy village clearings, harmonizing with the chuckling streams and the rustling leaves. At the very heart of this perfection stood her sapling, now a magnificent young tree whose luminous branches pulsed with a gentle, steady rhythm, a beacon of pure balance and peace. She felt an overwhelming sense of belonging, a deep, soul-level comfort that eased every concern and brought quiet to her heart. Waking was like surfacing from warm, clear water into the cool dawn air. She felt deeply rested, her spirit lighter than it had been in years, and a profound sense of inspiration hummed within her. Then she saw it, on her wooden windowsill, where nothing had been the evening before. A single flower had bloomed. Its petals were the color of twilight, shimmering with a delicate, silvery dew, and it seemed to hold the very essence of her dream within its fragile form, a tangible gift from the grateful woods. The bittersweet ache of longing was sharp and immediate. A part of her yearned to close her eyes and return to that flawless, cozy world, where every leaf was in its place and every heart was full. It was a powerful temptation to live within that beautiful illusion, but she looked from the perfect flower to her own hands, which bore the small marks from her journey, and she knew her true place was here, in the waking world, with its gentle imperfections and its need for steady care. With a quiet resolve, she carefully plucked the blossom. She brought out her thick journal of lore, its pages filled with sketches of plants and notes from elder tales, and she gently placed the flower between two blank pages, pressing it flat. It would be a lasting reminder that dreams are not escapes, but nourishment for the spirit, and that the most beautiful magic is the kind that blooms in the real world we tend with our own hands. This small, miraculous event was a quiet confirmation that the forest's magic was not merely restored, it was thriving in new and unexpected ways, and that her own spirit was now an indelible thread in its living tapestry. Closing the book, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She stepped outside to greet the rising sun as it painted the rejuvenated woods in soft shades of gold and rose, ready to meet the gentle demands of the new day. The morning light felt different on Alara's skin, carrying a fresh promise with the dew. Her new routine began at the heart tree, her hand resting on its bark to feel the steady, healthy rhythm, then moved to the threshold sapling, its luminous leaves a little broader than the day before. Finally, she stepped onto the Guardian's path, not as a questing hero, but as a tender caretaker. A few other elves, noticing her quiet pilgrimage, fell into step beside her, their presence a comfortable, unspoken agreement. This simple walk was becoming a shared ritual, a daily reaffirmation of their bond with the woods. The path ahead, however, presented its first small challenge. A slender, thornless vine had woven itself across the narrow trail, its delicate green tendrils tangled in a stubborn knot. It was not a hostile block, but a natural one, a test of patience rather than power. The easiest solution would have been to break it, to clear the way with a quick, decisive motion, but Alara knelt, her movements slow and deliberate. She did not pull or force the strands. Instead, her fingers worked with a gentle precision, tracing the vine's own logic, loosening one loop and then another, respecting its living structure. It was a quiet lesson for all who watched, a demonstration that true strength often lies in careful unraveling, not in forceful breaks. After a long, focused minute, the vine relaxed as if sighing, coiling itself obediently to the side of the path. These daily actions, though they seemed small, were the essential work of maintenance. They ensured the forest's renewal was not a single event locked in the past, but a living, ongoing process, actively nurtured against the slow creep of neglect. As the cleared path lay open before them, Alara continued her walk, the forest around her humming a quiet, happy tune that resonated deep in the soul. A new layer of sound began to reveal itself to Alara, a complex harmony woven from the forest's daily life. It was not one single melody, but a collective song, a symphony built from the rustle of oak leaves, conversing with maple, the precise trill of a finch answering the gurgle of a stream, and the deep, percussive rhythm of a woodpecker in the distance. Each sound was a note, and their interaction created a living, breathing piece of music that was the very voice of the woods. The challenge was immense, for this was not a fixed composition. The song shifted with the passing clouds, transforming from a bright, major key anthem under the noon sun to a soft, reflective lament when rain began to fall. A gust of wind could rewrite an entire movement in an instant. Her first instinct was to capture it perfectly, to pin the melody down on parchment with precise Elven notation. She would sit for hours, her stylus flying, only to have a sudden change in the weather render her work obsolete. Frustration was a constant companion, the desire for a perfect record, clashing with the reality of a fluid world. The breakthrough came when she stopped trying to control the song and instead started listening to its intent. She realized the beauty was not in a single, perfect version, but in the endless variations, the way the forest expressed its mood through sound. She began to transcribe not a rigid score, but a framework, a musical map that highlighted the core themes and left room for improvisation, much like the forest itself did. With this new, flexible notation in hand, she gathered the village musicians. They were skeptical at first, accustomed to playing the old, unchanging hymns. But as they practiced, something magical happened. The moment their flutes and harps found harmony with the transcribed themes, a visible wave of warmth pulsed through the clearing. The nearby flowers seemed to brighten. The leaves on the trees rustled in appreciation, and a deep, tangible sense of connection settled over everyone present. The performance at the festival was not a recital, but a conversation. The musicians played the foundational themes Alara had provided, and the forest itself seemed to join in, its birds adding descant, and its wind sighing through the branches as a gentle counter-melody. It was a breathtaking demonstration of unity. After the last note faded into a reverent silence, Alara made a pivotal decision. She would not declare the song finished. Instead, she announced that this would be the first entry in a new oral history, a living composition that each new generation of elves would learn, interpret, and add to, ensuring the forest's voice was never forgotten. The song was now a permanent, evolving thread in their culture, a story without end. Watching the joyful faces of the young elves who were already humming the melody, Alara felt a profound shift within herself. The urgent, world-saving chapter of her life had truly closed, but in its place was the beginning of an endless story, one that would be sung long after her own time had passed. The smooth, worn cover of the blank journal felt like a promise under Alara's fingertips. It was time to write her own book, The Eternal Forest, A Guardian's Tale. She began not with the grand moment of finding the sunstone, but with the quiet, uncertain evening. She first felt the heart tree's pulse begin to weaken. Her quill moved steadily, weaving her adventures with the practical lore of which mushrooms were safe to eat and how to read the warning signs in the curling of a fern. She wanted the book to be a guide, a cozy companion for any elf who might one day feel the call of the wild. Soon, young elves would gather by the hearth, their faces lit by the firelight, and beg her to read from its pages, their favorite stories becoming as familiar and comforting as the warmth of the flames themselves. Yet, a quiet tension grew with every chapter. She paused, her hand hovering over the parchment, as she recalled the cold grip of uncertainty in the mirrored caves and the sharp sting of her own pride when faced with the stone sentry's final riddle. Should she share these moments of deep personal fear, these cracks in her own spirit? A part of her worried that exposing her doubts would tarnish the story, making her seem less like a guardian and more like someone who had simply been lucky. She did not want to discourage a future seeker with the sheer weight of her own insecurities. After many days of thoughtful reflection, she made her decision. She dipped her quill and wrote it all down. She described the trembling in her hands and the whispers of inadequacy that had echoed in her mind. She understood that true courage was not a magical state of fearlessness, but the quiet, persistent choice to take another step, even when every instinct screamed to turn back. By including her vulnerabilities, the story transformed. It was no longer a distant legend of impossible perfection, but a deeply relatable map of a real emotional journey. The young elves listening by the fire did not see an untouchable hero. They saw themselves, and they learned that their own fears were not barriers, but part of the path. This honest chronicle ensured that the hard-won wisdom of her quest would resonate for generations. Her personal struggles and the lessons learned from them became a permanent part of the village's lore, a guiding light long after her own time. The book was more than a record. It was her living legacy, cementing her place not as a flawless figure in Elven history, but as a true and trusted friend. As she wrote the final words on the last page, Ilara looked up from her desk and out the window at the thriving, vibrant forest. The great trees stood strong under the twilight sky, and she felt a profound peace, knowing her own story was now a single, enduring thread in its infinite, eternal tapestry. The sacred grove felt both familiar and profoundly new, the air thick with the scent of blooming heartleaf and the gentle hum of a fully restored world. Ilara stood before the simple wooden pedestal where the sunstone had once pulsed, but it was no longer empty. The forest spirit materialized from the very light in the air, its form a shifting tapestry of dappled sunlight, rustling leaves, and the serene gaze of the starlit stag. Its voice was the whisper of 1,000 ancient trees, yet it spoke directly into the quiet center of her soul. You believed your quest was to retrieve a relic of power, it murmured, its tone not of judgment, but of gentle revelation. But the stone was merely a key, a symbol. The true test was always for the heart of the one who sought it. The spirit's luminous form shifted, and within its light, Ilara saw fleeting images of her entire journey, not as a sequence of events, but as a single, beautiful proof of devotion. She saw herself singing to the river, not to conquer it, but to join it. She saw the moment she chose to share her hidden grove with the village healers, placing communal need above personal solace. She witnessed her patient hands weaving the protective fence around the sapling, a small act of infinite care. Every choice, every quiet moment of empathy was a thread, and together they wove an unbreakable tapestry of love. The forest's magic needed a reason to endure, a promise that it would be cherished not as a tool, but as a living partner. Your actions have shown that the love of the elves for their home is not a fleeting wish, but a deep and enduring covenant, the spirit continued. You did not simply restore our light, Ilara. You gave us your own, and in doing so, you have proven that our magic is eternally secure, for it no longer resides in a single stone, but is woven into the spirit of every elf who tends the saplings, sings the old songs, and walks the guardian's path with a reverent heart. A wave of pure, warm understanding washed over her, a feeling of completion so deep it brought quiet tears to her eyes. The grove itself seemed to pulse with this new, shared vitality, a magic that was now as boundless as the love that sustained it. The great quest was over, but the eternal story of guardianship had truly just begun, its next chapter waiting to be written by every grateful heart. The heart tree's bark felt deeply familiar beneath Ilara's palm, its steady rhythm a constant companion through the many seasons. Now a revered elder with hair as silver as moonlight, she watched from her quiet spot as a new generation of young guardians played nearby, their laughter blending with the rustling leaves in a cozy, perfect harmony. They wove crowns of clover and chased fireflies under the watchful boughs, their every game a gentle echo of the great adventure that had secured this peace. The eternal forest itself seemed to breathe in a state of tranquil balance, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and blooming night flowers, the streams humming a quiet, contented melody. This vibrant, self-sustaining world was the living legacy of her journey, its lore forever enriched by the story of the Sunstone and the quiet choice to let it go. A deep, abiding warmth settled in her chest, a feeling of profound peace that needed no words. Her own life, with all its hopes and triumphs, had been woven into the very fabric of this place, transformed into the timeless bedtime tales that parents now whispered to their children under the starlight. These stories, passed from one generation to the next, were not just entertainment. They were a sacred promise, an enduring inspiration for every elf to cherish and protect the beautiful, eternal world they were blessed to call home. you.